What are you training for?
Life.
Welcome to Train for Life, a podcast brought to you by ISI Elite Training. I'm Adam Rice, founder and CEO, and we'll be hosting this alongside Amanda Hall, our COO. Tune in weekly as we explore topics on personal and professional development to help you level up in all aspects of your life. We call this Training for Life. Welcome back to the Training for Life podcast. We have a really cool episode today where I am going to actually interview Amanda, and we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is really relevant today. I think there's a million different opinions out there. So it is going to be talking about females in leadership, and really about getting to the next level if you are a female. But me being a male CEO of a brand, I have a certain perspective around this. Amanda, as a COO who has built her career and is now in the position she's in, she has a certain perspective around this. So I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. So let's go ahead and dive in. You ready?
Yeah, you're going to put me on the hot seat. I can already tell.
Yeah, I am. Again, to preface this, she doesn't know any questions I'm going to ask her. So I actually do want to start. So I was on LinkedIn actually earlier today. I saw a stat that was, I thought, pretty cool. So there was, I forget how many businesses opened in this past year, but 34% of them were actually females, which I think is, I don't know the statistic before that, but I'm sure it's up, which is really cool to see. Most of those were franchises. So quick little plug to franchise opportunities. How awesome.
And we have some amazing women franchise partners and owners in our brand.
I think it's over 50%.
Over 50%, yes. And they're amazing.
Not
that I'm biased or anything, but I am.
So you have we were talking about a statistic the other day. I don't know where you saw it, but it was around Fortune 500. What was it?
Yeah, so for the first time in 2023, 10% of the 10% of CEOs for Fortune 500 companies are women. But that's for the first time since Fortune 500 has been around in 68 years.
Crazy.
Which, and it's, to me, it's baffling that we're celebrating double digits and it's still only 10%.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think and I know you and I have gone back and forth on this, because as someone who, I don't feel like I'm biased at all when it comes down to this, right? I actually am a huge advocate for women in leadership. I think you guys have more emotional intelligence, you have more empathy, you guys have a very strong female leader, I think is more powerful than if you just put a man and a woman and they have equal characteristics, skill sets, all of that. You put them in the same conversation, they're going to be more influential. Through that, now you guys do have obstacles. There's historical data that shows that. So my perspective is I see this world of two kind of buckets out there. One bucket is that you've got the women empowerment kind of movement, right, going on, and has been going on, I think, for some time, but just really in the past 2-3 years has picked up a lot of momentum.
Right.
And then you have this other bucket, I think, over here that is the real statistics of what it is. But also, I think you have this other bucket of people who just see women as they are. And I think naturally women have whether it's not even, I don't think anybody's fault, but I mean, you guys are the ones having babies, right? Men can't do that. And so I think there's an obstacle there that most women, if they are going to have kids, it's going to be between the ages of 25 to 35, really the prime years of building your career. So you have this, whether companies want to, no company will ever come out and say it, nor should they. But if you take, I'm sure people have interviewed, most recently, Maggie, who just started with us.
Yes.
She interviewed, she was the right person for the job. And
33 weeks pregnant when we hired her. Yep.
Yeah. 33 weeks pregnant and we hired her. But I would say that's not the norm, right? Most companies, or at least a handful, will be like, man, we're going to get her onboarded for 2 weeks and she's going to be out for 12 weeks. And so looking at that, again, it just presents an obstacle, and we're talking about reality here. And so talk to me about your path and just give a quick backstory. Your path, you didn't go to college, you were right out of high school, you got into sales. you worked your way up, and then obviously through your career, you're in the position you're in now. But talk to me a little bit about your story, and then I want to ask you some questions.
Yeah, so quick story. It's funny, I actually graduated high school a year early. So I graduated when I was 17 and I've had always worked. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17 years old, which I have a 17-year-old daughter, so that feels very weird to say. Honestly, now I look back and it's a little shocking. But kind of planned to take the year off gap between that and college, and then found myself working in sales, initially for Alta Wireless for a year, and then Bell Atlantic Mobile, which became Verizon. I was there for 17 years. So throughout that time, I got married. I had 2 kids. I started in sales, then ran a retail store, right, and was over a sales team, customer service team, a multi-million-dollar store when I think I was 20, I don't know, maybe 22, 23 years old, and then moved into outside sales, national accounts, and worked with the Carolinas, Tennessee region at Verizon. And really, I'd always say, I kind of grew up there. But I don't know if I would have taken as big of a leap as I did had there not been a restructure, and my job was one of the ones that was cut. But that happened in the end of 2015, and then in 2016, I started working at Brand Burn Boot Camp. I actually was a member there. Approached the founder and was like, "Look, now you're franchising. Don't you need somebody to come help you?" And I literally stepped into a role and quickly realized that everything I had been learning for 17 years, real time, I was able to apply and help this brand that was 16 doors open, very small team, not really headquarters, full departmental structure yet. Over 5 years, I was able to take everything I had learned and put it into place, and do the work. I did a lot of work, but it was building my career for what it is today, and then later went on to be COO at Clean Juice, and then now COO here. But yeah, I mean, that was my path. I didn't go to college. I had a baby when I was 26 years old, my second daughter at 28. I always said I never wanted any kids after 30, and I thought I wanted 4, and I had 1, and then I didn't know if I wanted any more. But I worked, I also worked. Thank goodness I worked for some amazing people in my life. Dean Antonelli specifically at Verizon Wireless. I was with him for 11 years. And he was so great. He never encouraged me to choose my job over my children or my family, but he always let me integrate it. And I was so driven that he instilled this extreme amount of trust in me to balance my home life and my work life. And for that, I think I worked even harder for him, but I learned so much about myself from him. And he used to always say to me, I'd say, "Oh, I probably need to go back to college." I had this kind of doubt myself mentality, and he would say, "Why?" He's like, "You are so smart. You can do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
Figure it out."
Right.
So he put me in places to learn and grow and to do things that I did every job I've had, I've never done. I have always done things that are outside of that job role, always, just because I wanted to. Call it curious or learning, or, I just, that's why I say you do a job before you get a job. But that's a little bit about my kind of professional past, and then, becoming a mom at a young age. And
so where did you see your biggest area? Like I'm sure there was a point in time where you started stepping into more difficult conversations. Like, were you naturally a person that carried a massive amount of charisma and influence your whole life, and then you had to carry that over into the business place? And then did you ever have a point in time where, I know you talked a little bit about self-doubt, but a time where you were scared to speak up as a female? Because I know you were in several rooms, even through Verizon, from knowing you, and being around presidents and market presidents and all of that. And so I think for a lot of females that are just getting in, their career starting, or whether they're even at a director level, being around very dominant men, smart men, right? They can potentially not speak up when I think at the same time, like, they have some of the best ideas and the most knowledge to share.
right. For sure. I think even today, if I'm honest, there are times I'll shrink myself in a room,
Mhm.
um, and I don't want to say it's because I'm a woman, but at sometimes I can read a room really well. I've gotten better at it. And you can kind of sense when you're in a room and with men, if you're the only woman or there's only a few, and they tend to look directly at a man when they ask a question versus a woman. So I definitely would say I had some limiting beliefs, right? That maybe I couldn't do it as well as they could because I was a woman, if I'm really honest. I definitely had some limited beliefs, or, maybe I couldn't take my career past a certain point because I'm a mom. Like could I do this and that well, or should I? Is that what I should do as a mom? Does that mean I have to be in this role versus that? Those caused doubt. I think I definitely found myself in places, and I think the only way to get over that, honestly, is to build the muscle and speak up. Also speak up even when you're in the room where they don't want to hear you as a woman.
Right.
For one, it'll build courage. For two, if there's other women in that room, you're going to give them a seat at the table. And also come from a place of value. Don't just speak up to speak up. Don't, if you bring us a level of knowledge and perspective in something, it will be valuable as long as you have to learn how to speak up and then articulate it in a way that's, if you're in a room that's professional, be a professional about what you're speaking to. Once they see you can bring value, you kind of break through that ice and it changes. It's sad to say that there still is that level of need for women, and in the sense of, you think you're going to sit at a table, and every table you're at, they're going to say, "Hey, Amanda, what do you think of that?" It doesn't always happen,
That's where you and I see things very differently, because it's like you're living that, right? It's actually it's a very similar conversation. So best man at my wedding is African American, and him and I have this conversation a lot. And he's not in any way saying he's not playing the racism card or anything like that, but he's like, it is different. And from somebody who doesn't, and maybe it's just because I don't have any of those, like I see a human for a human. Maybe that's not normal. Maybe I don't know what it is. I just have a hard time like contextualizing when women say that or when another race says that, because I don't see it like that, right? And so I think from that standpoint, it does, like, the more curious someone like me can be in asking those questions, really allows us to be more empathetic and learn, like, what people, even if it's not going on, there's this perceived feeling that you do.
And sometimes it's internal, and I don't know if that's generational. So think about the things that you carry on that are hereditary, right? So think about where women were. I even think about my mom, how different it was for her to have a career than her mother, my grandmother. So, and everybody, my grandparents, they owned a farm in Iowa, then they opened the first gas station in Bellevue, Florida. My grandmother, she worked, my grandfather's out on the farm with my dad and his brother, where she is inside cooking and taking care of the house. But that woman could run circles around anyone, right? And my grandfather opened that gas station. She wasn't working at the gas station, but I'm sure she had a lot of opinions in it, and she could have if she needed to, right? So it's like thinking through that lens of, now then look at my mom, who, grew her career, went and got her master's, was just driven in that regard from a work perspective. And she had other opportunities for her, and then even for myself. So I think those things carry through. So, sometimes I wonder, and I think this a lot, I think as women, we can have self-doubting beliefs because we are a woman that really aren't there.
Right.
But I don't know if that's carried down. It's like an interesting question. I'd love to ask a psychologist at some point. But I also think there are messaging, and there are still men. I have still been in rooms.
We were in a meeting the other week, and it was very apparent. And it wasn't because I was the founder and CEO, but this gentleman, who is an older gentleman, was directly making eye contact with me and asking me questions, and almost as if you weren't there.
Right.
Which was just, and I because we've had these conversations, I'm so much more aware to it, right? But so tell me where, I mean, the facts are the facts. You can't argue with data, right? So there is a clear signal that whether it's women aren't getting the opportunity or whatever it is, like the facts are the facts. So 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by women. I think even the facts, I don't have the statistic, but I think those that are led by women actually are more profitable, which I could definitely see. What do you like? Why do you think that is? Like, we're now in 2023, right? I see this again. Like, I see this bucket of, and it, if I'm being very transparent, it frustrates me a little bit to see, and I don't want this to be heard wrong. I'm a huge believer in women's rights and all of that, but again, I'm seeing things as humans for humans, and so I don't look through that lens. But if a woman wants this opportunity, then I think at the same time, just like you have done, you have to do the work, right? Whatever area we're talking about, whether, people I'm sure will take this and go perceive it as I'm talking about healthcare or something else. No, like I'm just talking about advancement in leadership when it comes down to women. Like, you have to have the same equal conversations, which you've done. I've seen you do it over and over, step into hard conversations, say the things you need to say, have influence, your body language, all of that. Like, you've done the work required, right, to be a great leader, whether you're male or female. So my question for you is, why do you think in 2023 that only 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by women?
I don't know that women have, I think this is the first time, probably in the last 10 years, that I think women have really unlocked the potential. To go after, if you see yourself with the talents and the drive and the leadership ability and desire to do that, I feel like we are seeing that happen more and more, where women I don't want to say they're giving themselves permission to finally step into that. I thought it was interesting what you said about, we have the babies and during that kind of critical time. But I also think that there's been more opportunity than there ever has in the last 10 to 20 years for women to get in circles of leadership that have allowed them to for one, be seen, but also to develop and reach those. I don't think you have to be in a circle of men to develop. I just think that we are there's more options too. You have daycare today, you have nannies today, you have so many options, so many workforces now are flexible. COVID, most are remote and home. You can be with your kids. So for the first time in the last 10 years, I don't think women, they don't have to choose anymore. Right? You have so many options, and there's nothing wrong I just want to say this because I think stay-at-home moms are the CEOs of their house, right? And they are running and doing a million different roles, and their expertise and talents could take them, and they can use that experience and write a resume with it and use it anywhere they want. Anybody who thinks differently.
Totally agree.
Yeah. But I would say I think for the first time, these women reaching the CEO level has a lot to do with that ability to really, and honestly, the desire and seeing that ability to push that forward. I would say this throughout my career, and I am young. I don't say my age. Anyway, I'm young, I would say. I have, even in the last 5 years, sat in rooms still where I've been in a role and worked with people where being a woman, you are treated differently.
In what way?
If you challenge something, it's not seen from a perspective of knowledge. And I've brought data to the table and given very clear direction, and it hasn't been listened to. It's almost like it's doubtful, and data's behind it. Yeah. Because how would I know that, right? I've brought ideas to the table and had someone who is a man take my idea and make it their own. So they're presenting it a few weeks later as their own, right? So I have seen that firsthand, and sometimes I think there's this challenge in that, especially if there's ego involved. I don't want to be overshadowed by a woman instead of leveraging it. So I can't say that the path is completely clear. And I can only imagine in a Fortune 500 company that's been around for years, that good old boy mentality of, I'm going to, I've got your back, you got my back, we're going to move up the chain, makes it harder for, a woman coming in that can has that same level of knowledge and expertise to get into that if that's how that company has been driven. I think a lot of them are mixing that up now, and that's why you're seeing that number change.
Yep.
I think it has room to change a lot faster than it has.
Yeah, I think we'll see that number double probably in the next 5 years because, you just look at society as a whole and what's happening. People are having babies later. A lot of people are opting to not have kids. It's just a different generation coming in, right? And so I think from that perspective, like, we are going to naturally see that shift. And also, you talk about like the good old, whether it's intentional or not, it's been passed down. The reality is it's there because the data backs it up. Is a lot of those that generation is starting to, and I'm not saying, and I just know how social media is, and they'll take one thing and make it into something. I'm not saying that generation is sexist. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is those people in those roles where maybe women haven't had the opportunity that they are now having the opportunity will, over the next 5 years, I think we're going to see a kind of a mass explosion of leadership in that.
Right.
And it takes, energy breeds energy, and opportunity breeds opportunity. So the more CEOs that come around that are female, it opens the door, and then data is going to back that, right? So at the end of the day, I don't think a woman CEO is any better than a male CEO or vice versa. I think
it highly depends on your skill set.
Anytime in any level of leadership roles within a company, it's important to have both. But think about how many people are working within just even our headquarters team, but in any company that are women, right? Having someone that I just think it's really important to have a level of both perspectives. I think it brings a great balance to an organization. And I also think it, I'm not going to say that what's important to a woman isn't important to a man, because I think they're both equally, but maybe the needs at times could be different. I think it's good to have a balance and perspective in both seats. But I do think as a woman in leadership, I think women make great leaders. I think we're very intuitive to things, especially a level of emotional intelligence. I think it comes more natural at times to a woman, and they can get a good pulse and read on things that are happening. So I would encourage anybody who's got a leadership team and they don't have a good balance there, or at least they should strive for it, right? Because I think they're going to be a more well-rounded organization as a whole, and they're going to be able to deliver better to what any leadership team should be doing is all about their people, right? How do they make their people better? And I watch the leaders who are running not just running, they're owning facilities that we have. And they're some of the best at working even on the business at times and not in it. And they can rally teams and lead. And man, they're so smart, and they're very good at collaborating because they're social, right? And I just see those strengths play out throughout our facility, and then how it impacts their business, their success. I don't think women give themselves enough credit.
Yeah.
Especially in leadership in any way, whatever that is in your life, whether it's working in a business, owning a business, in your role as in an executive level, or if you're a mom, a stay-at-home mom, like, I don't think women give themselves enough credit for the way they lead.
I agree.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I want to end with this question because I think there's a lot of women out there who, they're in a position and they don't know how to navigate having tough conversation. They don't know how to navigate whether they come off as quote unquote bitchy versus influential, right?
I never do that.
Because it's this fine line, right? I'm sure that's not being a fear.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a fear, right? It's like, oh, she's just like that, right? And where a guy, if they are saying that, they're like, man, you're a strong leader, right? It's very different. I think I can see the difference very much in that. Or just it's nudged off as he's an a-hole and everyone moves on, right?
Right.
So what advice and how did you start to gain influence with people throughout your career so that you weren't perceived, or were you perceived as that and you just got over it? I don't know. I don't think you're perceived like that today, right? Because I know you're going to probably say relationship equity and all that, but how have you dealt with that? Have you ever had those fears? And then those people out there that are saying, man, I want to say something, or I want to move and I want to be more influential. What's kind of like one takeaway that
they could do. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I've been perceived that way before. I've always been a very direct person. I've actually had to work on my approach. And so I think a lot of that, whether you're a man or a woman, but I think for women who feel that way, like, oh, if I speak up, I'm going to be perceived this way. Just think about your approach, how you start the conversation. Know exactly what you want to say. Don't feel the need to put a lot of filler words in it, because when you're very direct and you are coming from a place of good intention, people are going to see that.
Right.
I think oftentimes we either are trying to soften it or we don't say anything. And I think you have to step into that. You have to also realize that fear is your fear.
Right.
It's really not the norm. And the likelihood that you are going to be perceived that way in a room of people who know you, or that you've built a level of relationship equity with, is very unlikely. Right. And you just have to step into it. I think you have to get over that need to justify the fact that you're in the rooms and the seats that you're in.
Yep.
And you have to move into the action of, I'm here for a reason and I'm worthy of it. So if you can change your inside talk, if you feel that way, it will allow you to push through that. And I mean, frankly, you're not going to always please everybody.
Right.
I don't know any leader that never has had a moment where people step out of a room and they feel uncomfortable when you needed to have a conversation that needed to be had. We talked about this the other day, like holding people accountable and saying what needs to be said. People want to be held accountable, and they don't want to kind of be, sort of be held accountable. They want to be held accountable. They want to know that they can trust you to speak up and tell them the truth. So I would just say, don't hold back. And
what's one takeaway?
Yeah.
That like, what's something that they could do immediately?
Yep.
To gain more influence and to not feel like
someone's going to perceive them in that way.
Beyond, getting your self-talk right. I think if you feel that people perceive that way, you're missing a level of either two things. You're missing a level of relationship equity with the people that you're trying to be direct with, meaning you haven't put in some of that work. So you got to put that work in. And then on the flip side of that, it could be that, you're not really thinking about the right place and time to have some of the conversations that you want to have. So I think sometimes people feel like, oh, if I want more, I don't know how to have that conversation with my leader, right? Or if I don't like this, I don't know how to speak up about it. Speak up about it. Just do it in the right way. Pull somebody aside. And I always say this too, when you're in need of something that you feel like could come off as complaining, but it's a justified need, start out the conversation with someone by saying, I need you to help me with this. I really want to X, Y, and Z. Or I feel that when we're in this situation, this happens. So sometimes it's just changing your approach and getting around people that can help coach you through it. But I will say this, do not shrink. If you walk into a room, and you have to remember this, I have to tell myself this a lot. There's no one in this room that's any smarter than me. They don't know more than me about maybe they do, but with what I'm coming in. And if you're speaking in front of people, no one knows what you're going to say better than you do, right? So they don't know if you mess up or any of that. You have to step into a room and you can't shrink. You have to bring a level of presence to it. And that just really starts by, stepping into it and not realizing the fear is really your own. It's not theirs, right?
One bonus thing that I thought of through this, and then I promise we'll wrap, is guilt. So, how have you dealt with this, right? Because again, to go from whether you're male or female to advance your career, like it's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take hard work. It's not going to take just showing up from a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And so I think inherently women feel like they are the caretakers. I think that's what society has labeled women, right? And, I've had the conversation with Tristan, my wife, several times, and I think that's one of those things of like, whether, again, stay-at-home moms have, I tell Tristan all the time, like, you have a harder job than me.
Yes.
There's no way I could do what you do. And I think stay-at-home moms are amazing, and it's incredibly hard. So this is really for the person that maybe is feeling a little like their purpose is, getting into their career, getting back into their career, or advancing their career, but they feel like to get to that level, to get to the level you've gotten to, that they have to sacrifice so much, then they're going to live with regret and they're going to feel guilty. How have you dealt with that? And then because you kind of have the perspective now on the backside, right? You got a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
So you have made sacrifice. You're now seeing the result of, hey, was this a good thing? Do I have regret, or was this a great thing? Do they feel more empowered as females?
Yeah. I mean, to say I've never had guilt would be a lie. I mean, for sure. And do you sacrifice? But I mean, if you're a dad, you're sacrificing. I think to say sacrifice, it really depends on, are you sacrifice? So I think there's two sides of that coin. I would be sacrificing something that I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And then if I'm doing what I really want, I could view it as a sacrifice for spending that time with my kids. So I think you have to decide, for a woman or anybody, there's a path there that you're going to take. I found really great care for my kids at a young age that I could trust. And then I just made sure that the time that I had with them was very valuable. I didn't miss any family vacations or doing that. Did I bring them along to work events and things like that? Absolutely. I integrated them in what I was doing. Were there nights where I didn't get home until they were in bed? Yeah. I just had to know that was going to happen. But I would tell you, on the flip side of that, especially having two daughters, man, like when my 17-year-old says, I'm like, what do you want to do? We were talking about this the other day, and I'm something like, what do you want to do this summer or whatever? And she's like, I really want to learn how to do an on-demand delivery service. And I was like, okay. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking there's a lot of those out there, but if she wants to do it, let's figure out how to do it. But they're very driven. She works. What you're doing, they see. And Ashton has even said to me, my oldest, you're who I want to be when I get older. And that means a lot. And she's speaking from the standpoint of work and like what that looks like to be driven towards something that you love and you're passionate about. So I would give comfort on the backside that if you're doing what you really want to do and you are happy, your kids see that. If you choose to stay home and that's not what you really want to do and you're not happy, your kids see that. So you're picking a sacrifice on either side. So I don't think one is better than the other. I think it's what's right for you. And I would just say you find ways to balance it. To say you're never going to have guilt in any area, especially with kids, I think that time is limited and precious, and you're going to have some. But at the end of the day, they're going to be better human beings whichever way you go if you are happy and choosing what you want to do. And you're sharing it with them. Share it with them. If you love being home with them, share it with them. If you love your job and working, share it with them. Do it in front of them. Don't feel guilty about it. Bring them into your office or get on your laptop at night and talk to them about what you're doing. That's ultimately, at the end of the day, I view parenthood like this. You have a limited time to make someone a very successful adult. My 17-year-old already today can have her own life and drive herself where she needs to drive. I said I moved out when I was 17, right? But at 18 years old, she's an adult. She needs to be able, in other countries, like I think in America sometimes she's got to be ready. Do her laundry, make her decisions, go out and live in this world. So I feel like by me doing and pursuing my professional dreams, because that's where I want to go, I am laying a path for her. So I view it in that way.
That's cool. That's really cool. All right. Well, this was a really good conversation around, I think, women in leadership, but also just about females kind of chasing your purpose, right? Whether your purpose is raising babies and influencing them in that way, or
yes,
raising babies and chasing a career path and how to go to the next level, if that's your desire. I think what I heard if I took from a very high level is do what you want to do and figure out the rest, because it's all going to work. And if you don't do what you want to do, then you're always going to have a level of guilt, whether that's
right.
If you're staying at home and you don't want to stay at home and you want to, then go chase that career. Or if you're staying at home, then and you want us to be at home, then don't feel guilty about it.
Right.
Love it.
And step into rooms and know you're worthy to be in that room.
Yeah, I love it. So until next time, we will see you guys on the turf.